Achieve your financial goals with these 5 key financial players with Chelsea Williams, episode 329. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and today we have a repeat guest, not a replay. This is going to be a brand new interview with somebody who's already graced the presence of our show before, and her episode that she recorded with us in the past is almost 2 years old. So I invite you to go back and listen to that episode. You can do it before or after this conversation, doesn't matter. It's not like the sequel. This might be the prequel to that episode. Who knows? We'll find out. I didn't record it yet. So we're about to do that recording right now. And I'm excited to have Chelsea Williams here with us. Chelsea is the founder of Core Solutions Group. She is a fractional CFO who has a passion for creating financial strategies that show business owners how to achieve their growth goals. She's been in the game for over 12 years and has worked with hundreds of business owners in many industries. Her superpower, she's a money whisperer. So we're going to whisper about money on this episode. But before we dive in, before we bring Chelsea onto the show, I just want to let you know, we have an opportunity for you. You've been hearing about it on past episodes. You're going to hear about it on future episodes. Why? Because it's just that good. Our coaches are able to spend one entire free coaching call with you. Absolutely no strings attached. All you need to do is go to profitwithlaw.com/free coaching. Now, why would you want to do that? There's a lot of people out there who think that, who needs a coach, right? You may not need one. You may be perfectly fine. But if you have goals, if you have dreams, if you have aspirations, if you thought that your law firm was going to create an opportunity for you, and that opportunity has yet to show its face, and you've been working hard at it, and the end is not in sight, then maybe you need somebody to help you look under the hood with you. What is the reason that you're not achieving the goals that you want? What's holding you back? What's standing in the way? What is stopping you from getting those results, from being able to be home with your kids, from being able to know that you don't have to worry about where the next dollar is coming from being able to enjoy your own time? I learned recently about this concept of a unicorn space. And I heard that from Elise Bowie at her talk at Max LawCon recently. And this concept that everybody needs the space that they can go into and they can just be themselves and be creative and enjoy those moments. For me, I'm a paramedic here in Rockland County. My unicorn space is riding the paramedic truck. For others, it's flying an airplane or doing art or composing music. Whatever your unicorn space is, when was the last time you spent time in it? If you are not finding the time to make that happen, something's broken. And we want to help you fix it. So book that free coaching call. Our coaches will help you work through that. profitwithlaw.com/free coaching. Chelsea, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
You are quite welcome. And thank you for taking the time, for giving up an hour of your day for our listeners. We really appreciate it. Now, normally I would ask you to introduce yourself, but guess what? We can send people back to episode 130, profitwithlaw.com/130, taking control of your finances with Chelsea Williams. They can listen there. They can hear all about you, what you're about, a whole conversation we had all about money, and get caught up. So we're going to jump right in. And I think that what we're going to talk about today is your key financial players. And what does that even mean? Key financial players. What does the typical law firm owner think their key financial players are? And how do they need to expand their thinking around that?
Yeah, and this is a topic I can really personally appreciate because when I first opened my doors, I was doing all the things, right? And this marketing thing came up and I'm like, okay, I need to figure out my marketing. Let me go find a person and they're going to do my website and my content and my social media and all of these things. And very quickly, I realized that what I thought was one person was more like 4 or 5 people on a formal marketing team. And that's what really makes sense to me when I talk about financial players, because I think it happens a lot where we don't know what we don't know, right? And that's why we have to bring on people like your team of coaches to help us uncover what is it that we're missing, what don't we know that we need to know, and who can help us figure that out. And it's the same with your financial team, because it is a team and it's more than one person, and understanding who those people are can help you in a lot of ways, even in expectations. There's a lot of people out here that are frustrated with their bookkeeper because they're not giving them CFO level advisory services, because they don't understand that there is a difference between a bookkeeper and a CFO. So I really like talking about this so that people can just be educated and know who you're filling the role as right now, and have a plan to delegate those things and to create that team and have them work together on behalf of you.
Yeah, I love this concept of understanding that there's different players, and your example with marketing is perfect, right? Because when it comes to marketing, I might have my SEO person who's in charge of getting us to rank in SEO. I might have somebody else who's in charge of our paid advertising. I might have somebody else who's in charge of our social media marketing. And those are all different roles. They're, if I go looking for somebody to hire and I try to just hire somebody for marketing that can do all those things, I'm going to get a jack of all trades, master of none. And if I go to the individuals, whether I'm hiring in-house or whether I'm going and hiring an outside company that specializes in that particular thing, I'm going to get somebody who's going to produce results for me. So this concept that spills over to really any part of your business, right? You're talking about financial key players, but what about intake, sales, right? There's somebody who's a closer. There's somebody else who can do a really good job of gathering the information necessary, presenting it, and those are not necessarily the same person. One of my mentors that I'm working with specifically for a particular sales funnel that we're working on is pushing us to do what they call a 2-call close, and having a setter and a closer. I have resistance around it, but the reality is that's like two separate people. One of them is getting you excited about the opportunity and preparing you for that conversation with the second person, who's then actually going to close the sale. It's going to help you work through your objections, going to help you see the potential that's possible for you, and get you to the finish line to be able to make a decision. And it's like that when you're practicing law too, right? I mean, if you just have an attorney and no support personnel around that attorney is going to be very inefficient. They're not going to be able to produce a lot of billable work. Whereas if you have an attorney with a paralegal and a legal clerk and a file clerk and a receptionist, all of a sudden that team can produce a ton of results for you. So it's every portion of your business has this team concept, this team approach. So Chelsea, there's a few different places we can go. First is like identifying what are those key roles. But the other place that we can go is navigating this dilemma that every business owner has, right? Like, I didn't start my law firm with an attorney and a paralegal and a legal clerk and a receptionist, right? We slowly step into that role and we fill those different spots. So how do we navigate that on the financial side with the key roles that various financial personnel have? How do we step into that in a way that makes sense for a law firm? It doesn't make sense for them to hire 4 different individuals to handle the finances when they only have $500,000 of revenue coming in. They're just not going to be able to afford that. So at the same time that we're discussing these roles, I want to start to paint a picture of how somebody can navigate that during the growth of their law firm.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. There are a lot of fundamental principles when we talk about who these key financial players are as it applies to every area of your business. And I like to say that business is absolutely personal when you're the owner. All of your personal habits, including how you work with people, how you spend your money, your mindsets, they are all what you operate with in your business. And I think one of the coolest things about being an entrepreneur is that it really requires we look in the mirror and be able to say, what is it that I need to change, and acknowledge and accept accountability for everything that is happening in my business right now is a reflection of something that I'm not seeing, which again, back to your point, I love working with people who have coaches because they get that and they see the value, and it really helps them to open up and expand in their business and personally, because there really is no difference when you're the owner, to be honest. So yeah, I love that. I love talking about who these people are and if it makes sense to delegate or what that looks like as you grow and scale, because we always have to keep in mind highest and best use of time too, right? And so being the bookkeeper, for example, in your business, when you're doing 6 figures a year in revenue, probably is not the highest and best use of your time, right?
Yep.
So yeah,
even if you're doing 0 in revenue, it's not the best use of your time unless you love bookkeeping.
I get that question a lot. And my response is like, look, if you have the time, meaning you don't have something else you can be focusing on, you don't have clients coming in the funnel, you're building out your marketing. If you have 15 to 20 hours to dedicate to a bookkeeping class and you insist on doing that, fine. But if you are missing 10 hours of billable work and missing out on $2,500 of revenue per month, and it's only going to cost you $500 to outsource it, that's an ROI. Take advantage of that ROI. Like really evaluate, do you want to learn bookkeeping?
Right. Exactly. And the thing is that it's not just bookkeeping is a thing we're picking on, but the reality is there's a lot of these types of things where it's very easy to fall into the trap of, I can't afford it, so I'm going to put in the sweat equity and do it myself. And marketing is in the same boat, right? How many law firm owners think they can just do their own marketing? The reality is that you probably could get some level of skill in marketing. You probably could get some level of skill in bookkeeping. The reality is that you're never going to get the level of skill that's going to make you efficient in that process. And unless you're doing it full time, and then you're not doing anything else. And the reality is that if you put people into those positions, you're going to achieve your success much faster. You're going to accelerate that. So it's going to require you to front some cash, which means that you need to have some investment in your business. But the reality is that is the difference between, if you look at the people who succeed fairly quickly and the ones who struggle and take forever, it's because the ones who struggle and take forever are constantly asking, how can I do this? And there's a book, Who Not How. I harp on it all the time. I haven't even read it cover to cover, but I love the concept of who, not how, right? Who can do this? Who is going to be efficient, good, get the job done, and it's going to cost me less than I could earn otherwise. Now, it feels like a dangerous game, because if I don't have money coming in, then I can't do better otherwise. But the reality is that if you had all the time in the world and didn't have to do any of these other things, you could simply be out there pounding the pavement, making connections until business starts coming in. And that's what you should be doing if you don't have revenue. If you have revenue, then you got to be putting the work through. And guess what? As a business owner, you probably shouldn't be the one doing it. You should be hiring an attorney to do it. You should be hiring a paralegal. You should be getting other people on your staff to do it. One of the things that I started highlighting for my coaching clients about a year ago. I realized that it's a really good way for people to understand the damage they're doing to themselves by holding on to it. When you as the business owner are doing legal work, you're only able to do 20%, 25% of your time during the week in legal work. That's the reality. The reality is that you've got so many other things going on that's how much time you're spending doing legal work. if you hire a full-time attorney, that full-time attorney at a minimum should be billing somewhere between 400 to 800,000 a year. Let's just use the number 500,000 for argument's sake. If you're operating at 25% capacity, how much can you pull in a year? 125,000, right? So if you hold on to that role, the most that you can do is 125,000 in revenue. You put another attorney into that seat, they can do 500,000 in revenue and only cost you 120 to have them in that seat. So which would you rather? It becomes very obvious when you lay it out that way. And I think that we need to look at all the roles in that way and through that lens. Now, it doesn't mean that you go out and hire yourself a CFO and hire yourself a bookkeeper and hire all these roles internally. There are other solutions, and I want to dive into that with you, Chelsea.
Yeah. And I mean, you make a good point. And a lot of that is mindset too, right? Like having the mindset to delegate, knowing how to effectively delegate and manage. The ebook Revisited is one of my business Bibles, and I read it like once a year because it always reminds me not to revert back to that mentality of, if I want it done right, I have to do it myself, but how to successfully implement SOPs or standing operating procedures that create consistent results regardless of who is in the seat. So I completely agree. And sometimes it's going to make sense for you to fill that role either temporarily or, again, what's your unicorn space? Right? Like I have a couple clients who decided that discovered that they had a passion for marketing when they opened their law firm. So they set their goal, and their goal was they wanted to stick to marketing. And then they opened up a law firm marketing company, and that was their unicorn space, right? They kind of catapulted this new passion through it. But having that direction, right? Like there's a lot of different directions we can get pulled as business owners. We have to be very intentional with the direction that we allow ourselves to get pulled based on what that is.
Well, I have two people that I can think of off the top of my head that have marketing firms. They are lawyers. Jordan Ostroff is one. Seth Price is another, right? And many of you are familiar with those names. You should be. They've been on this podcast, and my team will link up in the show notes those episodes. You can go back and listen to them. But the common denominator between them, those two, and I don't know how many others there are that, that this works out for, but if we look at them, Seth started his law firm with a partner, with another attorney who loves legal work, loves doing legal work. So he had the ability to step fully into the role of the marketing and intake specialist, right? Jordan Ostroff, his wife is his partner, right? She's holding holding shit together in the law firm, right? She's the glue there, and he's out having fun in his legalese marketing business that he's building, right? So if you're going to choose that your unicorn space is not law, that's fine. You can still be a law firm owner, but then bring on an attorney to practice law. Don't try to do both things yourself, because you can't be best at both things.
Yeah. Yep. That's absolutely right. And part of that is having financial clarity, right? When to hire, who to hire, based on all these different things that inevitably it comes down to you knowing what it is that you want and having some direction. So I'm going to go ahead and mention these 5 key financial players so that we have an idea of who these people are and kind of what they do. So everybody knows or has heard of the bookkeeper or accountant, right? But what we need to be clear about is what exactly are you to expect from this person? And the answer is essentially everything that needs to happen on a month-to-month basis in order for financials to be in your lap by the 15th of the month, right? Because then that kind of signifies the next stage of what needs to happen and also the next person that needs to be involved. So they'll take care of the things like the bookkeeping, the 3-ways, the IULTA reconciliations, the payroll, all of the things that need to get done for you to get those financials. Now, here's where a lot of people stop though, because financials are confusing. School doesn't teach us about money. They sure don't tell us who these financial players are because they all need to work together. A lot of people get stuck looking at those financials and they don't know where to go with them. That is where we put on our CFO hat, which is the next key financial person, be it you or somebody else. This CFO or the chief financial officer is essentially who makes sense of the numbers, who clarifies the numbers around a future destination of your choosing, right? Paint that picture. What is it that you want out of your law firm in your life? And the CFO can design a financial roadmap and show you what it's going to take to get you there. And to give you an idea, especially when you niche in an industry like legal, what ROI should you be looking at based off of hiring one attorney? How do we adjust the revenue, right? They make sure that the numbers are sound and give you a reasonable estimate of what a financial scenario could look like to you, and create KPIs. I think that's something that a lot of people miss as well, or don't start soon enough and leverage well enough, are key performance indicators, those needle movers in our business that are going to get us through those milestones into where we want to be.
Yeah, the key to getting somewhere. I mean, I like using the GPS analogy, right? You get in a car, you want to go somewhere, you got to punch an address in the GPS. And there's actually 3 things that need to happen for that to work successfully. You got to know where you're starting from, you got to know where you're going, and you got to know the best route to take from point A to point B. And that's what key performance indicators help you do. You need to have something you're focusing on getting to. You need to know where you're coming from. So you need to know whether you're making progress or not. And then you need to know what that progress means, whether it's you're headed in the right direction or there's a detour or traffic slowdown and you need to reroute. And that's why key performance indicators are so important. And I love this concept, this idea of separating the CFO role from the bookkeeper and the accountant, because the reality is that that's not a standard inclusion of services from a tax accountant or from a bookkeeper. The bookkeeper will run you a monthly P&L. That's a profit and loss statement. For those of you who don't know what that means, if you still don't know what that means, it's an income statement. It shows how much money you actually made, not revenue, but profit or money you get to take home. So that report alone doesn't analyze the figures. It doesn't tell you what they mean. It doesn't tell you what your profit margin is. It doesn't tell you. You have to figure that out. So somebody needs to take that report and turn it into something that makes sense to you. Now, I do think that every business owner should understand the basic concepts and should know how to read that and how to understand it. But at some point, it makes sense to have somebody who can, as Chelsea said, run different scenarios. And I have, my coaching clients, we do this all the time. Every quarter, we do a quarterly planning session. And there's always these questions of like, what's the right next step to achieve the goal that I want? Well, let's take a look at what would happen if we focused on marketing in the next quarter. Let's take a look at what would happen if you brought on another staff member in the next quarter. Let's look at the increased expenses. Let's look at the expected increase in revenue, if any. And then let's look at your bottom line, look at your profit margin, and then let's see which is the one that's getting you one step closer. So, I'm helping people, hand-holding them doing that. But imagine if you had somebody in that role that did it for you, that presented you with all these options and helped you be able to navigate and make the right decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see all the time where, because people don't understand that bookkeeper and accountant is totally different than a CFO or a tax preparer, because that's our third person, tax preparer, is that they get frustrated with the bookkeepers and they bookkeep hop. Is what I see. They'll go from bookkeeper to bookkeeper because they're not getting what they want, but what they don't realize is that's a totally different person. Right. And so in the meantime, their financial data becomes a mess because they're going through multiple people. So yeah, knowing the difference and understanding that as long as you're getting a financial statement, your bookkeeper is doing their job, essentially. Right. And that next step is typically on you, unless you outsource it to someone who's going to help coach you and teach you how to become that role. And it's really important that you understand that role because, again, business is personal for us, and your business habits are your personal money habits. And a CFO in your business, and I see it with my clients all the time, we implement Profit First, Mike Michalowicz's multi-bank account system. And so often clients will implement it in their personal lives and have credit card strategies and all of these things. So it's something that you absolutely need to understand the fundamentals 100%, because you're going to benefit personally from understanding that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to review, we've covered 3 roles so far, right? We have the bookkeeper, we have the tax preparer, and we have the CFO. What's our 4th role?
Now, I want to speak to tax preparer and just say one thing on the tax preparer, because I also want people to understand the difference between someone who prepares a tax return and someone who creates a tax strategy that is proactive and based on your unique goals in life. Tax preparation goes to the tune of, hey, here is all of my stuff. I don't want to pay any taxes, so make my profit go away as best you can. Okay, I'm going to look at the last 12 months and prepare a tax return based off of that. Mm-hmm. Tax strategy asks questions like, what are your personal financial goals in the next 3 to 5 years? What is your entity type? Do you have children? What types of tax loopholes are you utilizing? How can we create an entity strategy so that you are being able to utilize all of these tax strategies? Are you buying a house next year? Because if your goal is not to show a profit and you want to get a home loan next year, a bank is not going to look at your income statement and see a net loss and say, sure, let's lend you money. And people don't kind of understand how those two correlate. So finding somebody who's going to ask you about your personal financial goals and make sure that you're creating a proactive tax strategy can save you so much money and in the long term get you to these financial goals a lot faster.
Absolutely. So we're separating the roles of tax preparer and tax planner or tax strategist.
That's one and the same, but you want to find a tax preparer who's going to create the tax strategy.
Got it. Okay. Perfect.
But it does kind of go hand in hand with the fourth financial player, which is your advisor or retirement planner. Mm-hmm. And so this person, and let me just say, it is never too soon to start planning for retirement. Even if you don't have $150,000 sitting around to give to an investment planner, having clarity around when you can jump in, what you can do now, what to work towards, and meeting with this person on a regular basis is crucial. I talk to so many business owners who have been in business for 30 years and they're just now starting retirement planning. And every single one of them wish they would have started sooner. So no matter where you're at, no matter how much money you have or don't have right now, find you a financial advisor that you jive with and start getting an idea of what retirement or working by choice, because a lot of people are in their passion and they don't necessarily want to retire. They just want to work by choice, so that they can punch it in their fancy software and give you a visual projection of what your retirement looks like and how to get there.
Yeah, I love that you bring this up. And I love that you highlight that it's never too early to start. What's funny is, and this is really funny. So I'm batch recording today. You're my fourth guest, and I have one more behind you. And when people are listening to this, they don't realize, oh, this was recorded, weeks ago or months ago or whatever it was. But earlier today, 3 guests ago, I had Wendy Brookhouse. So for listeners, they might have heard this 3 weeks ago. And Wendy is a financial planner. That's what she does. And what's interesting is that this is exactly what we covered in that episode. Is, she introduced this idea of just get started, because you want to start building the habit. You want to start getting in the mode of saving for retirement. And I correlated it to Profit First, right? The Profit First book, if you go through that process and it's like, how do you get started? If my profit's supposed to be 20% and I just start putting 20% in, I'm going to fail, because after the first month, I'm going to run out of money because I have all these other obligations I've already committed to, and I can't sustain that 20% profit number. So the key to getting started with Profit First is to start with 1%. And that's the same idea with saving for retirement. You don't have to max out your 401k as a business owner at $56,000. You can start off with 1%. Just put 1% into your 401k. Or if that's too much, do 0.5%. A 0.5% of $10,000. What does that work out to? Still $50 or $500? I don't know. I'm trying to do math off the top of my head. But whatever. Either way, it's something, right? It's dollars in that you wouldn't have put in otherwise. It's not about saving the tax on that $50. Right? It's about starting the habit of putting money away, because if I put $50 a month away at the end of the year, I now have $600 in a retirement account that I didn't have in there before. And maybe after a few months, I can tweak it up to 1%. maybe then I could tweak it up to 1.5%. And that needle can start to move, but it starts somewhere. And it's about doing something that's sustainable, something that you can stick to. So I love this.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Mike Michalowicz says in his book, profit is not an event. Profit is a habit. Retirement is not an event. It is the result of a habit that you have created the prior 20 years or whatever the case may be, right? Success is not an event. It is a habit. These are all fundamental things in every area of our business that really matter.
Absolutely. All right. So we got 4 out of the 5. I can't wait to hear what the 5th one is.
So the 5th one surprises people, and I get funny looks when I talk about this one. But the 5th one is your business banker. And a lot of people are like, you know what? My grandfather used to take his business banker out to lunch back in the day, but it's 2022. I don't even go into a branch anymore. Why in the world do I need to know who my business banker is? And something just happened that proves exactly why it is in your best interest to have a relationship with a business banker at your bank or banks if you have multiple. So when COVID hit, what was the financial relief? The financial relief was the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, right? Mm-hmm. Where did you get the PPP? Where did you have to go? You had to go to a participating bank. Mm-hmm. Now, I can tell you, because I'm behind the scenes and because of the industry that I'm in, that people who had existing relationships with their business banker had a much smoother time getting their PPP than the people who had no idea that business banker was a thing. They hardly ever spoke to anybody at their bank. And so they put in multiple applications with multiple banks, hoping that whoever came through first. And really what it did was just smash up all the gears in the process, and it ended up taking longer. It was a disaster. So having a relationship with a business banker, that is absolutely one of your key financial players. And I say relationship with your business banker, relationship with all of these players. So what do I mean by relationship? So here's where business is personal, right? Your personal relationship and communication habits are your business relationship and communication habits. These are humans. These are people. People make mistakes. The better the relationship, the better the communication, the better the results. Knowing how to communicate with everybody in your business, including these financial players, is crucial.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Chelsea. And you highlight a recent pain point for people to drive it home, to people to understand. But I want to take it to a whole nother conversation. And that is that we're in a world right now where you can start a business for $100. I mean, you literally can buy a domain, create a website on Wix or Squarespace, and get a Zoom phone line and a fax line. And you can be an absolute 100% operational business with an email address, a website, a phone number, and a fax line for $100 or less. Probably do it for less today, right? And the problem is that what that has created is this phenomenon, which we kind of talked about earlier, but we didn't put this stroke on it, right? We didn't color it this way. What we have is this phenomenon where we're setting ourselves up to wanting to do everything ourselves. The reality is that what you need in order to grow your business is you need capital. And that capital, most people are not in the position to just pull it out of a savings account and deploy it in their business. Now, some people have it in a retirement account. They've been doing a good job in their retirement account. And then they make the absolute crucial error of pulling out the money from a retirement account and paying the taxes and the penalty on that in order to start their business, where you can borrow money for significantly less, not incur those penalties, not screw up your retirement, and at the same time be able to invest in your business. And investing in your business, I'm not talking about when you open on day one. Because first of all, if you borrow money on day one, you're probably going to spend it on the wrong things, and then you won't have anything left to show for it. I'm talking about at every stage of growth. You want to go from 2 attorneys to 3 attorneys. You want to go from 3 attorneys to 5 attorneys. You want to go from 1 paralegal to 3 paralegals. You want to add 4 support personnel. You want to start investing in marketing. All of those things take time before they start producing results. And you need to be able to invest in that for the amount of time necessary until those results come to fruition. Now, it's not a long period of time, which is why lines of credit, business lines of credit, are so useful in the growth of your business. I recently, and I don't know where I talked about this. I don't remember if it was a podcast or if it was a coaching call. My listeners will know, because if I talked about it on a podcast, then they heard it. But my ex-wife became an alcoholic, and my kids were subjected to the trauma of having an alcoholic parent. And in the aftermath, once I discovered what was happening and was getting them the help that they needed, I would take them to an Alateen meeting, which is a meeting for kids, teenagers who have been subjected to alcoholism in the home. And while they were at their meeting, where would I go? I'd go hang out in Dunkin' Donuts, order myself a coffee, and sit with my laptop and get some work done. So there were these 3 older gentlemen who would come in and meet in the Dunkin' Donuts. And after 2 or 3 times of seeing each other in passing, we started to talk to each other. These conversations ensued. And one of them told me, he said, he said, I was in business for 60 years or 50 years, whatever it was. I'm retired now. I sold my business. He said, you want to know what my key to success was? My line of credit. And he basically explained that every 6 months, he went for a line of credit increase every 6 months. And he said every single big decision in his business was driven by the power of that line of credit. Whether he wanted to buy a building, whether he wanted to buy out another company, whether he wanted to start a new division, it was all driven by this line of credit. And I didn't realize the power of what he was sharing until I started working with law firm owners myself. And I realized how scared the business owners are from taking the next step, because they're afraid, what if it doesn't work, or what if it takes longer and I don't have the runway to support it? So I love this concept of having a relationship with a banker, because you absolutely need capital to fuel the growth of your business. And if you're going to wait till you save it up and have it in a savings account to deploy in your business, it's going to be a long, long journey. Now, it's not wrong. You can do it that way. You can take the slower path, but being able to rely on a bank for what a bank is there for and get access to capital quickly, so you could deploy a new strategy and then reap the results. And within 6 to 9 months, have those results pay off completely, where you can pay that line of credit back down and now have it ready for the next investment in your business. So I'm in on this banker, and I'm not shocked, by the way. I was curious what you were going to put as number 5, but it's not surprising to me at all. The question I have for you is, this is a tough one to navigate, because I mean, you can't get a banker at Chase, right? So where are you going for a relationship with a banker?
And you're right, because nowadays we have 100% online, right? Bank options. And banks are different based on what it is that you're needing. So law firms need a bank that offers trust accounts, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to go with like the Wells Fargos, the Chases, the things like that. But understanding that your smaller banks, if it has a first in the name, or like community banks or credit unions, and even Profit First, Mike Michalowicz will say, have more than one bank, work with more than one bank, because their lending requirements are different too. So finding a bank that does have still the position of business banker, be it a credit union or a community bank or whatever the case may be. And again, treating it like a relationship. Send them referrals, take them out for lunch, ask them about their kids. This is a relationship. This is communicating. This is connecting. This is networking. And in this day and age, you have to kind of do those things to build that relationship. And it definitely sets you apart, because things have changed so much. There's so many things that have changed post-COVID. And that's one of them. That connection has been lost a little bit. So it really helps you to stand out.
Yeah, and I think doing a little bit of due diligence to understand who, what that banker has impact on, right? There are some banks where all credit applications, facilities are done completely in a different department. The banker has absolutely no influence on it. And that relationship, although it's wonderful, really is not going to help you with when it comes to this part of the business. So you need to find those regional or community banks that not only is it impactful to have that relationship, but it actually can influence the process of how that credit works. And this idea of constantly trying to increase your credit, when you start, you're not, first of all, no bank is going to give you a line of credit until you have a certain level of revenue. And that level of revenue can be as low or as high, whatever. $1 million is really the threshold, right? So when you're below $1 million, it's very hard. I mean, you're looking at non-bank lines of credit that are very expensive if you want to start a line of credit. But it's possible with the right bank to get started earlier. So that's part of the due diligence process that you want to do when you first figure out who is it that I want to establish a relationship with, is at what level would you start to consider whether you'd be interested in opening a line of credit for me? And then what business do I need to have in place under your roof? Because you mentioned a good point. Like if my trust account has to be at a different bank, then it'll make life really difficult if every time I need to transfer from trust, it's going to a different bank. So then I'm going to have my operating account probably at the same bank that the trust account is. Well, then most of my banking is happening at this other bank. How does this bank get my business, right? So having those conversations with the banker and figuring out what is the best way that you can scratch their back, that you can channel your banking through their accounts so that they can see the activity and they can be interested in your business. All of that is foresight, right? It's looking towards the future and understanding what are the upcoming needs that you're going to have. You don't have those needs on day one. You don't need to borrow money on day one to get your law firm going, but you very quickly are going to need to have a safety net once you start to build your team, once you start to invest in marketing solutions that are going to take time. And those are the big investments that you're going to have, or even a large technology undertaking, right? You're hiring a technology company to implement a new CRM or a new practice management software and automate things for you and things like that are going to make you more efficient. But you got to come up with the upfront fee for that. You don't want to plunk it on a credit card unless you get the miles and you pay the credit card off with that line of credit.
Yeah. And there's a word that you're repeating that I want to highlight, and that is strategy, right? So we're not just going into a plan or like a marketing plan or dumping money into a new software without fully analyzing what needs to happen for this to be an ROI, right? What are the variables that I need to be aware of? How can I make sure that I really leverage this decision and this investment so that I can put the money back in my line of credit or pay off my credit card or, whatever the case may be. So these aren't just knee-jerk decisions. These are very well thought out, consulting your team, financial and other, to make sure that what you're doing for your next step of growth makes sense and you can measure its success.
Now, Chelsea, I have this question for you. I mean, these 5 players, they make a lot of sense. And I think that people are starting to get their eyes open like, wow, there's actually a lot more to this than I realized. And I'm probably wearing a lot of these hats myself right now. And I realize that I need to start getting them off my plate. But then you talk about this concept of it's a team, right? And the team needs to collaborate. So are you envisioning this boardroom where all 5 of my financial people are sitting down and meeting and going over my numbers, and my bookkeeper's there and my tax accountant's there and my banker's there and my CFO is there? Like, what does this look like in real life when we start to put these pieces into place? How are they interacting with each other?
Yeah. So not everybody at the same table. I mean, wow, wouldn't that be awesome? But your banker doesn't really need to know what's happening on your taxes unless you're going for a line of credit. So relevance, right? But communicating where it counts, like your tax preparer and your retirement planner being able to meet once a year, or your CFO and your retirement planner being able to meet biannually, to make sure, because what your financial planner does is they have that software that will project scenarios. But what do you need? You need financial data from your business because your business is part of your retirement strategy. right? So you have to have both of them coming together to verify the data and, make sure that they're on the same page, because then in turn, the retirement planner is going to say, man, well, if you can get the value of this business up to X amount of dollars or generating X amount of dollars in revenue within 3 years, that CFO needs to take that information back to the drawing board and create a strategy that actually gets you there.
Yeah, I love that. And it's you as the business owner need to drive this, right? You need to give the players permission to talk to each other. You need to make sure that they're setting appointments and that those conversations are happening. You don't necessarily have to be in the nuanced details of the conversation. As long as they know what your goals are and what you want to have happen, you can just find out what was the end result. But ultimately, it's almost like if you've ever had an employee work for you, if you don't check on their work and make sure they're actually doing it, they might be sitting on Facebook and Amazon all day, right? And they need to know that you care enough to get the results so that you're getting those results. And, that is only going to happen if you're driving the ship. You don't have to be manning all the stations, but you gotta be the captain. You gotta make sure everybody's at their station doing what they're supposed to.
You have to hold yourself accountable. You can't just dump your data into your bookkeeper's lap and expect not to answer questions. You can't get the financials and not look at them and then be upset when they're not helpful to you because you're in a state of reaction and now you need those financials that you haven't looked at for the past 9 months. And then, get upset. You have to hold yourself accountable to the information. You have to hold yourself accountable to the relationship, to asking questions. I get this response a lot where this is probably a dumb question, but no, it's not. And guess what? At the end of the day, you're the one that needs to know, because you're the one that's going to suffer if you don't ask and get the answer to that question and understand it for yourself. And, people that try to DIY bookkeeping, instead of outsourcing it, are you really the best person to be doing that? Are you going to do it right? Because garbage in, garbage out means a garbage business decision in some cases, right? If you can't afford a CFO, at least working with someone to get the fundamentals. I have a budget and cash management setup service that I offer where we project 12 months and talk about the operations behind it and identify the milestones and put the controls in place. And then it's DIY from there. But you have the blueprint, even if a fractional CFO is not the solution. So you're absolutely right. I think the other side to all of this is being accountable for what you need to be accountable for.
Yeah, I love that. And so walk me through this service that you offer. That sounds like the perfect thing for somebody who needs to start getting their feet wet, but not quite ready to handle, to bring somebody on, fractionally or full time into that role.
Yeah, it's really one of my favorite things to do, because numbers don't lie if you do it right. And it can be very eye-opening. And it can even, I see so many light bulb moments when we go through this, because people are like, holy cow, my dream actually does pencil out to dollars and cents. I can do this. And this is how many leads I need. And this is the team I need. So it's really awesome. And so what we do is we build a budget, a very customized budget with line items or chart of account that is descriptive and grouped intentionally. And we have the team members lined out. And then we project revenue goals for 12 months. And then we go down and we talk about, because you can't measure what you can't see, right? We talk about all of the data points that need to get collected so that you can hold yourself accountable to all the numbers. We talk about the team members, strategic hiring. We talk about ROI on individuals. And so we go through and make sure that we have a really sound financial forecast over the next 12 months with operational objectives as well, because money is a reflection of your operations. They go hand in hand. So we have both sides of the conversation. This tool also projects the technical, like tax liabilities, what you need to expect for that. It implements the profit first strategy. Mm-hmm. So we have formulas at the bottom that position you to launch that cash management tool, and be able to set it up and follow through, because a budget is no good if you sit down and you build it out once a year. And then next year you look at it to see what you did. You got to use it consistently, at least monthly, and hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome stuff, and a great tool that you've built and exercise that you do with your clients. We're, Chelsea, unfortunately, running out of time. You know that I have in about 2 minutes, somebody's going to be waiting in the wings to do my last final podcast interview for the day. It's quite the marathon today. So, what I would like to know from you is one last piece of advice that you have for our listeners today, based on our conversation, something that they can take and really, take to heart and run with. And then how do they take the next step with you if they're, interested in learning more specific, the service you talked about or anything else that you have to offer?
Yeah, I would say the piece of advice is, pay attention to your daily habits and what you're doing. Because like you and I kind of pointed out, all of this and all the departments in your business is really a result of your habits over time. So really get clear about what it is that you want, what it is that you don't want, and create those habits that are going to get you there. And I can be found at yourcoresolution.com. And everything is on our website that you could possibly want to see having to do with us. So that's where to find us.
Awesome. I love it. Chelsea, thank you so much for being here today, sharing this amazing information with us, and really opening up the eyes of some of our listeners. Some of our listeners are just too cool for school. They already know all this, but the ones who don't, I'm sure that this information is really helpful for them to start to understand how deep they really need to go when it comes to their finances. That there are these multiple parties involved, that there's different aspects that you need to think of and look at, develop a relationship with a banker. You know what? That's the one piece in this whole puzzle that you actually don't have to pay anything for, right? So you don't have to go hire the banker. You have to go find the banker and start working on that relationship, start having conversations, maybe take that banker to a networking event with you, help provide value to them while at the same time getting yourself positioned so that when you're ready, when you need it, that relationship's already in place. You already have a tax preparer. If your tax preparer is not doing tax strategy, tax planning, if you're not having discussions before the end of the year, that's pretty much the telltale sign that you either need to discuss additional services with that preparer, or you need to find somebody else who does that. Bookkeeping, you gotta, as Chelsea said, you gotta have a realistic understanding of what the bookkeeper does. What is the bookkeeper's role? Is the bookkeeper doing their job for you? Are they getting it done timely and, on time? And are you getting the bare minimum that you need from that information? And if not, then you need to shop around. You need to look for somebody else. Then it's, am I ready for somebody in the CFO role? Right. And you got to be able to afford that. You're going to have to pay somebody to do that. And you got to figure out if you're up to that step. But then you got a nice little cheat that, Chelsea and her team do, where they can get you started, help you create the plan, where you don't necessarily need to have somebody involved all year, but at least you got the playbook. At least you got the action plan of what you need to execute on to make this happen. So really love everything that we covered. Hopefully that was the complete recap, and everything, all the links, including Chelsea's links at the end, it'll all be in the show notes, in the description of the episode, in the resources section, as well as on our website at profitwithlaw.com. And I just want to remind you, if you're interested in taking the next step with us here at Profit with Law, we offer a free coaching session. We invite you to take advantage of that. Go to profitwithlaw.com/free coaching and book your time slot now. Chelsea, once again, thank you for your time. Take care. And our listeners, we will see you on our next episode.
Awesome. Thank you.
Have you been enjoying the show? We sure hope so. To make sure you never miss an episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player app. Next week, we will be back with more valuable resources and ideas on how to break the mold and take your law firm to the next level.